Alright, fellas and females, a lot has happened since last time we were together, at least on this project. But I guess for starters, there's no rail on the top of our Raven anymore. Which was kind of a tough call. It was actually in some of my earlier concept art, I guess you could say, when I was kind of mocking things up the first time. I edited or kind of drew on it a little bit and made it have a flat top, and it looked good. But the whole time I've been working on this, I had the carry handle on there, and it looked good, and I was like, maybe I'll just leave the carry handle on it. But it kept making the Raven look like a Raven with things attached to it, and I was like, I want to incorporate everybody, kind of break up the Raven a little bit, so it kind of makes everybody a little more even. And so I was working on this, and it was about 11:30 at night, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna cut the thing off and see how we feel. So I cut the top off, and then I kind of sat back and went, oh, jeez. And I kind of suffered through the night, going, crap, did I just make a huge mistake? And then I woke up the next day and looked at it, and I was like, there's potential there, we just need to put a rail on it. So, the rail I used was the rail off of a broken Ravonix that I happened to have, which was about the longest rail I could find, and it's kind of cool because it's got this non-typical detail where it's smooth and just has a couple little notches instead of having the kind of up and down detail. So that's kind of a little bonus to have that be a little more distinctive. Also added just a little bit of material here on the sides to plug the void, where the carry handle was, so it all blends in nice. And I'll probably fill in the name detail later, but that's not quite so crucial. Now my goal on the back here, I thought about cutting it off straight, but what I'm going to do is add kind of a top, kind of like a, reminiscent of the little visor thing that's on the cam ECS. And I'm planning on putting a little voltmeter or something back here, so it'll kind of help complete that. Another rather major addition is, because I had the butt pad on there before, but I had a big void. And so this is actually some sheet styrene that I added to fill the void. Let's get a little zoom on there. Then what I did was I got the actual butt pad itself, kind of glued in place just in a couple spots to get it located. And then I made this template out of just some poster board off of a box I found around the garage. And I knew this was kind of a for sure line, so I matched that up. And then I basically just, ran this guy in to see how, where I needed to cut what in order to get it to tuck underneath the Raven. And so I cut off kind of a straight line, kind of in the area that I figured the Raven was going to need to be leaving. And then just kind of slid this guy in and trimmed where I needed it. Transferred it to the styrene, tucked it in there, Defconned it, and now I'm already to the kind of putty in and final blending stages there. So that's kind of a nice little bonus. This here, just a little extra bit of Defcon. Now the bottom was kind of a weird bonus. I mean, after I cut the carry handle off the Raven and was suffering the remorse for that, I happened to just kind of set the pieces down, and I had this is the front loop off the front of the carry handle, and it kind of sat there, and I was like, hey, what a cool way to not only kind of technically get a sling point back, since we're losing this one, but also to kind of create a better line to where instead of having the bottom of the stock hanging off like a diving board, this basically creates a kind of an illusion, more of a kind of a complete stock. So hopefully when all the body work is done and there's paint on it, you won't see this being a piece here stuck on a Raven. It'll kind of pull everybody together. This piece comes out a little bit and it'll all blend, and everybody will look good and happy and stuff like that. Another little addition I made, because at the same time I set this project aside for a little bit and played with making a hyper pistol on a whim. And I cut the stock off and set it aside and thought, this line here looks a lot like the same angles that's on the Raven jam door. And I thought, well, that'd be kind of cool to be able to set that on there and have an actual kind of cheek rest thing. There again, not only to be just kind of a cool feature, but also to make it less familiar, because before, like I said, if we had the carry handle on the Raven and the Raven stock and everything else, and it looked very much just like a Raven. And by removing the carry handle, extending the stock and adding this, it's really, you get all the likable parts of the Raven without it looking just like a Raven. And so it'll give the blaster a whole lot more of an individual identity, instead of looking at it and saying, hey, you got a Raven with a bunch of stuff hanging off the front or whatever. It'll look like, wow, it kind of helps break up the lines of where does one blaster end and the other begin and stuff like that. I also was able to use the front of the Raven jam door for the time being. This isn't finalized, it's just kind of mocked up still, but to be able to use this as a access door for something, I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether this would be a good place to store the battery, but I'm also looking at getting one of those small 12-volt compressors in order to fill the air tank that's up front and just run some lines from the tank from the compressor. But I don't know how big the compressor is, if I'll be able to fit it back in here, or if I'll need to fit it inside the magwell. I'm not using the magwell for magwell storage. This will just be strictly either battery and or compressor storage in the back. So I'll probably be doing something to the bottom here to kind of blend it in, cap it off. An idea that I have, because this little detail here and the mag release button is going to be hard to try to blend away and be like, hey, this isn't really what it is anymore, so don't look at that. So I think what I'm going to do is use the original mag release button and put a switch in there that will activate the compressor, whether an on-off switch, and then run some kind of like a constant switch, and then have some kind of pressure valve sensor thing that just shuts the compressor off when you reach whatever pressure you have it set at. I don't know if I can get one of those small enough to fit in here and incorporate, but if I end up having to just use a momentary switch, I can attach it here so that when you're holding the blaster, you're ready to go, you can just hold that for a second, charge the tank, have the tank ready to go, pow, and then charge it up at your leisure. That's just an idea. Not sure if that's going to work at all yet or not, or if it's even a good idea yet. I'm not sure, but that's kind of a consideration. That's why I haven't done a whole lot to this piece here. Up front, I have the tank kind of set inside. I've already cut the tank down a little bit in order to just get it to fit, so we can kind of start fitting the rest of the internals around. I also added a tactical rail here from a night finder, just to kind of break this up a little bit, because it was just flat and it just kind of looked like there's supposed to be something here, and of course it's supposed to be this, but that would look really crappy, honestly. It's just kind of bulky and weird and wouldn't serve any real purpose. And so to kind of detract from the fact that it was very obvious that there's something missing, I put the rail on there, and then hopefully, I haven't started work on the trigger or anything here yet, because I wanted to wait until my tank was set up, but I'm going to have the trigger mounted up in this corner, and then have the trigger guard come off of the very back of the tactical rail and come back and hook down like that. So that's why this little area is open. But that's kind of how things are looking right now. Looks awful flat topped. I'm probably going to get some like clamp on iron sights, Jace 3D or something like that. Haven't decided yet, but that'll kind of break it up a little bit. But for the meantime, we can always just like add something like that, because that makes it look nice, gives it a little more of a completed look. But that's kind of where things are going right now. All these pieces are Defcon and almost completely Defconned. All the main joints are Defconned in for keeps. There's a few little areas, like kind of in here, of course, where I'm not really sure how to go about blending the pieces in. There's going to be quite a little bit of work yet there, and especially on the other side of basically, what the heck am I going to do with this really weird area in here. So, and haven't decided whether to fill those slots or do something else cool. There again, depends on how the tank goes. There's a lot of decisions are kind of predicated on how the tank situation works out. I mentioned before about being able to tuck the side of the magwell in a little closer by cutting out this area here. What I ended up doing in reality is I didn't cut it out, but I shaved it down a little bit. And if you look at a regular Stryfe, there's kind of a step down here where the little ventilated looking spot is a bit, just a hair lower, like Not even necessarily like the thickness of the plastic, but it is a little bit of a lower level. So I basically took my file and just shaved down this upper area and shaved it down to the level, this lower level here, and I was able to pull the sides in just a little bit, just enough to make them a hair lower here and kind of fit better together overall. So next, really the next big project is just a whole lot more, basically the center, the very center area, working on mostly the Stryfe. This surface here, let's zoom back in, this surface here, kind of the main part of the Stryfe, is just a bit taller than this area of the Raven, but not as tall as this area of the Raven. And so it's going to be kind of a tough call on, do you carry this straight back to here, but then what do you do with it when you reach this point? This guy here, do you just leave it kind of straight, or do you kind of angle it off? Because now you're conflicting with this kind of angled line here, and then whatever the heck you're doing up here. The purple part, or the blue of the long shot front gun, is just like the tiniest bit taller here. So do we just, because I think this is still lining up pretty close to this body line here, so do you shave it off flush here, but then that puts that break up a little higher? There's a whole lot of, kind of hard decisions to make there, so that's kind of the next big hurdle. And there'll be a lot of discussion on that, I'm sure, as far as, why I chose what body line and what level to follow, and what my rationale is and stuff like that. I might not have a good reason. I might just say, you know what, it'll be easier to do this, or I'm just gonna do this because. So that's I'm not making any real promises that that's gonna be amazing or anything. Here, because it's a Stryfe and the Stryfe is flat on this side, part of me likes how this is like smooth, and you get a lot more of the kind of character of the long shot front gun where this hooks down, and this guy here is kind of unadulterated, but now you have kind of this weird hole. Part of me is considering bringing this level up to match kind of the same level here and have the same relationship, just to add a little more symmetry to the blaster, because I really would like to have a lot more of a symmetrical blaster. And a consideration I had, kind of a brief, when you're sitting in the bathtub and your brain wanders off a little bit or something, taking a 180 cover, motor cover, and fitting it on this side just to carry the Stryfe style, I guess, to both sides, which is too bad because it kind of cuts into this area here and kind of throws it off. So I might just go kind of follow just kind of the little hook area here and carry it in over here, and I don't have any good ideas, I'll admit that. Right now I don't have any solid plans. I'm just might just try some things and see how that goes. But the overall body is pretty much established. Now it's just getting the kind of the fine tuning and getting some little quirks worked out of it. So hopefully by next time you see this, most of this bodywork will be completed, and we can start talking about internals, or perhaps some mechanical systems. So that's that for now, and we'll see you next time.